In the previous video, this computer, or what's left of it, was actually found in my front yard. I went out one morning and, well, as I checked everything in the front of my house, take the garbage out and all that stuff, I found this in the front yard, and I'll put a link down below if you want to see the video. The computer was in rough shape. It was bent, dirty, disgusting, nasty. Even found a little friend, or remnants of a little friend in it. So definitely check out that video. So I just did the right thing, brought it inside the garage, cleaned it up, and try to see if we could get it working. After cleaning up, verifying that everything still worked, I was able to fire it up and it actually worked. Even the mechanical hard drive that was in it worked. It booted into Windows. Of course, it had the person's, password, but well, I wasn't worried about that. I just wanted to make sure it works. So now in this video, what I'm going to go ahead and do is actually test this thing out. As this A10 series, I never used them. Never had the chance to get around to them. And I'm curious how well they perform or don't perform. And I'm also going to show you that if you have one of this vintage or even a Lenovo series of this with the Intel variant, it's pretty easy to do a case swap. Now this is from and I already threw the case out, it's a Lenovo 90BG. It came with the AMD A10, I believe it was the 7800 variant, 12 gigs of DDR3. Yeah, I know. And from my reading understanding, these things were just nothing to be proud about. Just not good performers, but I'm curious. During that time when these things were released back in 2012, I always stuck with Intel. I had the i7 3rd gen, 4th gen, somewhere around there, and I was always happy with it, and I really never entertained the whole idea of AMD for that. So I'm curious to see what I was missing and not missing. Now, doing some research on this AMD series had like the wrestling names. I mean, the wrestler moves, the pile driver, the excavator, the bulldozer. I mean, names like that, you would think these things were pretty powerful. Nope, definitely not. But, I mean, it was still a cheap budget option, as I think these things, the prices were somewhere around the $150 range and up, going from the A6, A8, and I think the best one was like the A10 9700. Just weird numbers. Like I said, not familiar with it. So first off, let me show you what we need to do to get this thing running without its proprietary home. Now, this is just a standard MATX, but if you notice, the power connector is, well, and I'll take it out and show you. It's not standard, it doesn't have enough of the pins, but the CPU one is regular, but this one, you're missing a couple of pins. You need to pick up one of these adapters. They're on Amazon. I'll post a link below. They're about $10, and it allows you to use a traditional 24-pin power supply. And all you do is plug it in and you're ready to go. And I found that this works for the Lenovo's of this area that have the 3rd and 4th gen. I haven't messed with 6th or 7th gen, so I can't tell you much about it. But if you got a Lenovo 2nd, 3rd, 4th gen Intel and any of the AMD variants with this type, you need this adapter. So I'm gonna just plug this in just like so, and we're ready to go. Now, of course, and I saved it from the case, the power connector, yeah, not traditional, not standard. Has a whole bunch of pins that are not there and that are there, and that's where we end up with this. But fortunately, unlike the Dells where you had to do some tomfoolery to it, this is pretty simple. So let me zoom you in. So now that we're zoomed in, as you can see, there's 13 pins, and on the top left, there's that blank one over there. So the brown connector is your power button. So blank, 1 and 2, there's your power button. Right next to the brown, you got that green and white over here, and I'm only using this one because it's easier to kind of explain it with colors. But your green and white is going to be your power LED. The red, if you look at it, it's in a different position. That's going to be your hard drive LED. And for those of you who still use the reset button, if you see that blank connector, the blue on the bottom, that is your reset. So I'll get a better picture. I'll post it up here. But if you do this, this will fire it up and you'll have normal usage, reset, LED action. It should work. So now that we have the power supply set up, memory is installed, well, it was installed and all that other stuff, and we got our power connector ready to go, I need a graphics card. Now, 2012, I think the graphics card that was like good around that time was like the 700 series or the 7970 series from AMD. I don't have anything of that old. Actually, I have stuff that's older. I think I got a 560 Ti, but I really don't want to use it for that. So we're just going to do the right thing and just bottleneck this a little bit, or maybe a lot of it. I don't know. And we're going to use my Frankenstein GPU. Gotta love old Frankenstein. This is an RX 580. It's the 8 gig flavor, and it's got plenty of wire ties just to hold everything in place because, well, it's not worth buying the cooler, as $40 for the cooler, and I paid $10, or maybe this was free. Can't remember. Well, the zip ties I got plenty because I'm always at Harbor Freight, so that works, and that has always been my go-to just for testing. For a drive, solid state 500 gig, and this should be plenty of space for all the games that's probably not going to work on this or will work on it. I don't know. So let's get everything plugged in, fire it up, install Windows 10. Yes, we're going to go with 10, and let's see how well this thing works. Let's get our drive. We're going to need power for it, just like so. We got this special cable over here that's orange, and there's a reason why I'm using this. I have it, and it's the one that I have lying around. So yeah, just plug this right in here, just like so. This way, nope. That way, yep. Now let's take Frankenstein, and probably should cut these. Not today. Let's pop him in. Got our little USB for the world's greatest keyboard that probably everyone uses. Comment down below, let me know if you use that keyboard. And we're gonna plug that in here. Yep, that should be good. And our copy of Windows 10. So now to show proof of concept, here's the power button. Oh yeah, I always forget this. I just, yeah. All right, here we go. We got lights, we got power. Oh, kind of helps if I plug this in the HDMI. That is correct. Now, do we have a post? All right, let's try this again. Several moments later, and we're up, we're running, but now we got a 1080. So I had this 1080 that I wasn't going to use for this video, but it works. And that's what we got to go with, what works. And now we're definitely going to have some bottleneck issues going on. Not sure what's going on with Frankenstein. This thing has always worked good for me. Now, don't judge a book by its cover, because this card works very well, but maybe it's just finally kicked the bucket. I'll have to try it in another rig later and see. Also, what I might try to do is see if there's a BIOS update that might help. That sometimes tends to fix things, but Windows is installing. The 1080 is running strong. We got a little bit of light action, potential RGB. Awesome. So, you know, we're gonna get a couple more frames per second. Probably not. So let me let this thing install, get some games installed, and we'll see how this thing runs. It's working. And if you look, Frankenstein's back. So that's a good thing. Pretty much a BIOS update did it. It had a 2016 BIOS. I popped in the BIOS and, well, it works fantastic. I know a lot of people have a lot of reservations about updating the BIOS. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. I have found on this older hardware, if you're going to tinker with it, you might want to update the BIOS, as it'll give you more options later on. So it works, installed, and this thing has been running pretty decent. So it only took about an hour to download everything and get this thing running. Got rid of Spectrum. Very excited about that. No more Spectrum. Was paying like $80 for 500, and the best I would get is like 30 to 40. Now I got Metronet. I pay $70 for a gig, and I get about 6 to 800. Pretty awesome on that. But anyways, so we got the Shadow of the Tomb Raider. All the drivers are installed. Waiting for this thing to load. I will say, this A10 7800 with DDR3, it's a little slow. It's a little slow. I mean, just right here, our CPU is pegged at 100%. Our RAM, the whole 7 megabytes, I mean 7 gigs, we're using it. So yeah, maybe with 16, I don't know. But either way, DDR3 and the CPU platform, it's slow. It's slow. So let's let this thing run through the benchmark, and let's see how well this thing pairs with our RX 580. So 1080p, I'm at medium settings, and we're at 57. The previous scene, it dropped to 30. Got a bunch of stutters going on, and I will say this A10 7800, ouch. Now this RX 580 ain't no slouch, as I use this for a lot of budget builds. If I could get an RX 580 for about $20 to $40, I would definitely snag one up. But yeah, paired with this old CPU, not good. Now I've paired this with an i7 3rd gen and 4th gen, which came around the same time, and it performs a lot better, you know, the RX 580 that is, with that combination compared to this one. But yeah, I'm glad I skipped this generation of AMD. Even though it's got the cool wrestling names, she struggles. And we are at 48 frames per second, and that's because we got a lot of drops and dips. So let's move on to the next one. Cyberpunk. Being a little ambitious with this one. Surprisingly, I've been playing this for a little bit, and it plays pretty decent for the most part. I mean, I would say we're averaging about 40 frames per second. I'm at 1080p low settings, but as you can see, our CPU's pegged out. Our graphics card, it does what it needs to do when it needs to do it. But overall, it looks pretty good, performs well. But the biggest issue that I keep getting is those drops, and a lot of that has to probably do with the CPU. So yeah, Cyberpunk, definitely playable. Let's move on to the last one. And finally, the Fortnite. I'm at 1080p, low settings, medium settings, combination of both. And this thing runs like garbage. It just keeps dropping on me. It's not a smooth, playable experience. And I know it's not the graphics card, because I've run this RX 580 with better CPUs and I've not had this issue, but as you can see, it's just stuttering and running like garbage. So good to know, and definitely something to consider. So I'm gonna wrap this up, give you my final thoughts. So what was the point of all this? Number one, I was curious if this thing still works, which it does. But I was also curious on how well this AMD, I think it's like Steam driver, Pile driver, Steamroller. I'll correct it on the screen. I forget the weird wrestling names that they had for it. But I was curious on how well they perform years later. And as you can see, not well. If I am going to do a potato, or not even a potato, but if I'm going to do a budget flip, it would definitely be an Intel 3rd gen, 4th gen, as those even 12 years later perform very well. But this one does not hold up. Yes, this is the A10 7800, and you probably would want to go with the, I think the 9700 is the top line model that you could get for it. It might perform better. If you guys are interested in seeing that, definitely let me know down below, and maybe I'll try to hunt down one of those CPUs and see how well they perform. But I mean, I also got to see if it would work with this motherboard. Not too sure on that. Now, of course, like I said, the limitations of this being the CPU and even the memory. DDR3, we're running 12 gigs. 16 gigs might help it a little bit, but I really doubt it. The RX 580, definitely no slouch. Performs very well years later. And like I said earlier, when I get these things for like $20 to $40, I definitely put them in budget builds, and they perform very well, and I have customers that are still happy with it. But this, I will say, I am glad that I skipped this generation. I never got into it. And what would I use this for? Honestly, I wouldn't mess with it. If I was to see these, I probably would more than likely just scrap them for the DDR3, if that. But as far as even potato builds, definitely not, and not impressed. So comment down below. Let me know your thoughts, concerns, criticism. This architecture, do you still mess with them? What were your thoughts on it? What was your experiences with it? And do you think I could have done anything better to get a little more performance out of it? I doubt it. If you like this video, definitely hit the like button, subscribe if you're not, and as always, see what I come up with next.